Also, while we wait, if you want to, there's a couple resources in the Collaboration Clinic course that I'm going to be referring to, as well as a little kind of graphic organizer for you to take notes if you prefer to do that. So if you go to the Collaboration Clinic course in Echo, under Thursday, all the way down at the bottom are the resources that I'm going to be using. If you're done, I'll come around and, yep, take one, pass around. Anybody else? Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else need to knows?
We're assuming they'll be answered.
Okay, good. I'm assuming they will too. You can check me on that. Thank you. Anybody else? Specific need to know you want answered? Hi. There's chairs if you want to stay. There's some right here. I know it's tight, but thank you. Do you want to kind of sort those and see what we got? Thank you. Thank you. We have floor space too. So if you're a note taker, you're somebody that really wants to have a spot to take notes, in that Collaboration Clinic course in the Thursday briefcase, again, all the way down at the bottom, the very first document right here, notes sheet, you might want to open that up. I'm going to be talking about 3 things today. I'm going to be talking about a culture that supports agency. I'm going to be talking about scaffolding strategies and assessment strategies. So hopefully those are some of the need to knows that you wrote down. I'm seeing some nodding heads, so that's great. So I'll give you a minute to pull that document up if you're somebody that likes to kind of take notes. There's some chairs up front if you want. Yeah, welcome. Nice big group. We're all passionate about agency, or curious. Okay, so you're in, go to the courses, and there should be a Collaboration Clinic course. You're in leadership course right there.
And click on Thursday's Collaboration Clinic, is that right?
Yep. Mm-hmm. And then if you go to Thursday Collaboration Clinics, all the way down at the bottom, you'll see these resources. All right, we're going to get started. My name's Megan Pacheco. Hopefully you're in the right spot. We're going to be talking about agency today. If you're wondering what this guy's doing over here, we are going to be recording it, and I'm assuming we'll post it somewhere. So if you want to share it with your colleagues that maybe aren't here or watch it again later, that's there for you. Thanks. So we're going to do a little warm-up just to get our mind into sort of what we're going to be talking about today. So I want you to take a minute just to reflect on a time in which you have personally tackled a difficult task. So think about something really that challenged you and when you were successful. So take 30 seconds, a minute, just get that in your mind. I want you to really kind of visualize a time when you tackled a difficult task and you were successful. If you have that time in your mind, just give me a little thumbs up so I can kind of get a read of the room. Great, thanks. So now I want you to think about what were the things that contributed to your success. And again, try to come up with some very concrete things that you felt like contributed to your success. Take this next minute and share with the people around you. What were the conditions that led to your success? It'll pop up. Yeah, it'll pop up one at a time, yeah.
I think that finishing the trail is an accomplishment, but finishing it in a place where I enjoyed it and actually came back in a much better place than I started. Probably the best achievement. I wrote down perseverance, an ability to surrender things that the Lord you can't control. For example, a thunderstorm and you just realize you're going to get wet again.
All right, so given that we don't have a whole lot of time in this session, I'm going to cut us short. But I already heard some good things. So I want us to just kind of popcorn out, and we're going to kind of list some of the things that we felt contributed or were some of those conditions for success. So it can be something you said yourself or that you heard from somebody else. So just shout them out. What were they? Persistence. What else did I hear? Motivation.
This is what contributed to the success?
Yes.
Support?
Planning.
Great one. Overcoming fear.
Patient teacher?
So maybe under the support, patience.
Time management?
Communication, your own ability to communicate, or both? Okay.
Adjusting to challenges that came up over time.
Flexibility. Right. We could probably go on and on, but I think you kind of get the gist of this. I want to share a story with you about a former New Tech student. It was alumni that came to speak with the New Tech Network staff a few months ago. And by all accounts, I considered a success story. And so she's in her third year at Berkeley. She was the valedictorian at her New Tech school. But she came to us very concerned. She's going to graduate. She's on track to graduate from Berkeley in 4 years. So again, this was, for me, listening to her talk was a success story. And as she talked about her experience at UC Berkeley, she talked about how she had to seek out her professors at their office hours, and she had to go to extra tutorials, and she had to stay up late and work hard in order to be prepared for these big tests that she took. And she had to form study groups, and she had to do all these things just to get by. And we're all sitting there listening to this story, and we're like, this is great. This is exactly what we want a New Tech graduate to do. This is what leads to success. Someone that can persevere, that can manage their time, that uses their resources, that collaborates, a lot of those things that I just heard from you. What did she think of that story? She was stressed out, and she saw herself as a failure because she had to go do all those things. She thought, in her eyes, she thought she was the only one that had to do that. And that made her a failure. Why couldn't she just cruise through college the way that she had previous educational experiences? So that made us stop and really think, she's got so many of these skills, but she is not self-aware about those skills and those strengths that she has. So that was really kind of a critical point for us and New Tech Network on our step towards this outcome of agency. Because we thought about how do we ensure our students have those types of attributes that she was describing, but they're also self-aware enough to know that those are great attributes that they can carry on. And I really began to worry that what if she goes on to graduate school or a career and she isn't successful? How is she going to respond in that situation, or more importantly, feel about herself? So agency, I think it's natural to think about agency as a need for struggling students, but I think it's just as important for all kids. So as we go through today, I want you to think about two things in terms of your own story. How did your own beliefs impact your success? So what were your own mindsets that impacted your ability to be successful in that situation? And what role did mistakes play or struggles play on your path to success? So just kind of keep those in mind as we kind of continue talking. So hopefully this is not new to you, that you've seen this in various sessions throughout the week, but I just wanted to put it back up there for us to think about. This is our definition of agency, and I think the really critical part of this, it's both about your beliefs about yourself and being self-aware, but it's also about how you put those beliefs into action, what you do with those in the moment of struggle. So I think we need to be attentive to both sides of this when in thinking about all of those things of culture, the types of activities we have students do, and how we assess. A little bit of more history about how we came to this outcome of agency. Simultaneous with this alumni coming to us, we were also doing a lot of investigating into the non-cognitive factors that lead to success. And so this report in particular, Teaching Adolescents to Become Learners, was a big part of our research in that, and really looking at those things that help students to be successful in a variety of environments. And a lot of these are aligned to that, these descriptors that you've seen on the agency rubric. Carol Dweck's work around mindset was also a big part of our journey towards agency. Up till now, most of our schools have had an outcome called work ethic or something similar. Professionalism, something like that. But what we have seen is what that really boils down to is, what is it? Did they turn it in on time? Absolutely. That is such a small part of those attributes that we listed as the things we need to be successful. So we really wanted to push ourselves as a network to think about how do we move beyond just, yes, it's important that you meet benchmarks and turn things in on time and you're following kind of the instructions of the assignment, but how do we get to some of these other ones about how to persevere, how they think about their own growth? And really, when I think about that New Tech alumni, she had a pretty fixed mindset. She believed that, oh, sorry, go back one. Darn. Mixed up the slides there. So she believed that she had to appear perfect at all times. So that kept her from taking risks in her own growth. So how do we help those kids really to take risks? I want to read an email I got from a New Tech teacher. I'm going to read just the first part of it right now and see if this resonates with any of you. My team teacher and I used to grade almost everything. That became our motivator. Our first-year high school students came in asking, is this graded? And we responded with what we thought would be motivating. Yes! Upon reflection, grades became decreasingly effective, and we found ourselves needing to up the ante as the pool of assignments from the year grew. A 2-point work ethic journal became meaningless and was blown off by our students. More concerning than the grade inflation and lack of motivation to do what we say was that we witnessed a decline in the kind of engagement we were after. Students' main concern seemed to be whether or not they were right, and if they had done what they were supposed to, and how this would affect their grade. The patterns that we witnessed were not new, and they were patterns that others at our school had noticed years before. At the end of this, I'm going to share where they came to in order to grapple with this. Does that resonate with anybody, what you heard from that teacher? I think, we talked about motivation. That's the second one that popped up. How do we really motivate kids to keep persisting in the face of challenges or go beyond sort of that compliance mode of things? Isn't that like our number one struggle as a teacher sometimes? Go ahead and go on. So I'm going to present a couple dilemmas. So here's the first dilemma. Students who are unsuccessful do not believe they can be successful. You experience that? They get caught in this cycle. I'm unsuccessful. I can't do it. I'm just not going to try. So what I want you to do right now is take 2 minutes with the people around you and talk about this. See if you can, based on what you've heard this week, learned this week, or your own experiences, how do we put students on a path for success early on in the process while still maintaining high expectations? In a PBL environment, this agency, this growth mindset is going to be even more important. So go ahead and talk with the people around you and see if you can come up with some things around this. So I'm hearing a lot of people say, that's a really tough question. I don't know. Because it's really tempting, I think, to lower expectations in order to help kids, under the attempt to help kids to feel successful, right? So I'm going to offer 3 things. Number 1, students need to understand and believe that effort and practice lead to success. We need to be overt in talking about that with kids. We need to highlight when they are successful as a result of effort and practice. Reinforce the behavior we want, right? Number 2, students need to develop perseverance and risk-taking in their academic endeavors. Again, how do we be overt in that? How do we create a classroom environment where they know that's safe to try to step out on a limb, offer their voice where they might not have before? What messages are you going to send about the values of your classroom in your school? Number 3, students need a clear understanding of what areas they need to grow. We need to give specific feedback in order for them to grow. Hearing lots of typing, so I'll stop there for a minute, let you process that. I'll also post this presentation. So I want to talk specifically kind of about this feedback piece. It's very tempting when students do something well to say, "Great job! You're so smart! Great work! You're the best student ever!" I don't know, whatever. What's the problem with that, with praise like that?
You're addressing the outcome and not how they got to the outcome.
Right. And why? Right, right. Go on.
Then does that mean that if I don't do good, that I'm not smart?
Exactly. So students with a fixed mindset think something along this lines. When I have to work really hard in a subject, I don't feel smart. They view hard work as a deficit. So when you pray like, "That brilliant, you're so brilliant, you didn't even have to work hard at that, great job," you're reinforcing a fixed mindset. Students with a growth mindset, on the other hand, think the harder I have to work at something, the more effort I put into something, the better I'll be at it. How do we help them move from fixed to growth in the type of praise and feedback that we give them? Could someone offer an example of feedback that or praise that might get you more towards growth?
You put a lot of effort into that. Praise or effort, not praise.
I love the effort you put into that.
Or call attention to the specific part of it, like if they, if they did a paper and they had a really strong introduction, but it fell to crap after that, go, "I really love your introduction. Your introduction was incredibly strong." So they feel like they've done something,
And what about that made it strong?
Yes.
Be as specific as you can in your feedback. So they know exactly, next time they know what made it so awesome and strong. And then, you know what, I saw that you struggled here. I want you to focus on this, this, and this for your next revision.
Can you just ask them what they think they've done well?
Yeah.
Like have a rubric and have them.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times I have concerns that they externalize the praise and it only counts if it comes from somebody else who's not them.
Yes, yeah, I agree. Yeah, so the more you can have, and that's a huge part of growth mindset as well. It's the ability to reflect on your growth, your challenges, how you responded to those. So this is I'm going to give you a hint on your little graphic organizer there. Under scaffolding, lots of opportunities for them to reflect. Strengths, challenges, what they did to get from A to Z, what they did to be successful, or how they responded when they hit a roadblock or an obstacle. So here are some other hopefully practical things. So on this side here, you see these are the domains on the agency rubric under the side that develops a growth mindset. So for us, it was about the fact that they can use effort and practice to grow, and they understand that effort and practice leads to growth. They seek challenges, they grow from setback, and they build their own confidence. So here's some potential teacher actions, and again, we've kind of talked about some of these, but to just explicitly emphasize that mastery takes time and requires revision and iteration. Asking them to revise their work will help them with a growth mindset. Having them reflect, celebrate growth, praising effort over intelligence, encouraging students to work through problems before seeking assistance, normalizing mistakes. How might we normalize mistakes?
make sure they understand that everybody makes mistakes and that you're not the first person that does it.
Yep. Everybody makes mistakes.
For revision, and that's built in. So if those that are, that's what you do in the world. What you make the first time around in engineering isn't the final product.
Everybody make mistakes. Mistakes, in fact, is how you learn. You need to struggle and make mistakes in order to learn. Letting them know that is a big thing. Just saying that is a big thing for them. but also how you respond, how the community and the culture responds when mistakes are made, how you respond when you make mistakes sitting in the front of the classroom in this new PBL environment where you're taking risks. Will be part of that. So here's dilemma number 2. In order to develop a sense of responsibility and ownership, students need to practice ownership. So this goes for all of our outcomes. If we want students to become good collaborators, they need an opportunity to collaborate and struggle with that and learn from that. So what I want you to talk about now with your the people around you is, how do we create opportunities for students to fail in a controlled environment so that they can learn from their mistakes? Go ahead. Okay. So we've got 17 minutes or so? Okay. 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 I think I'm all right. Okay.
So agency, already on camera, agency almost seems as though it would be like a combination of citizenship work ethic, problem solving. They're more leading
All right, anybody want to offer something up to for our question here? Something you heard, a great idea you heard, or something you thought of? Go ahead.
Something that we were discussing was the idea that teachers admit when they've made mistakes, or if you're in the middle of doing something and it's not quite going the way you want it to, you stop and say, you know, this isn't going that well, let's redo this. Because you're admitting that you make mistakes.
And give me your feedback on how we can do this better. What will work better for you? Other ideas? You were all chatty a minute ago.
When I was younger, I can't remember what the name of the group was, but it was some group that we were in, and anytime anybody made a mistake, we had like this little 4-second celebration. It was like, hey, so-and-so made a mistake, and it was this little, it wasn't a cheer or something, I can't remember what we did, but I remember there was a definite celebration of mistakes.
Yes.
So I'll say it now, I'll be like, oh, I made a mistake, and people are like, okay.
Yeah, you know, it's funny that you say that, because that's one of the things that I observed a teacher do was they like celebrated the best mistake of the week. They had like the end of the week celebration of like, hooray, you failed tremendously, you know. Or, you know, there's this video on the teaching channel of this teacher that does my favorite no. Yeah. So on the warm-up, a couple of you have seen that. She has them on an index card similar to what we do here. They solve the warm-up problem. She goes through it and she finds the best mistake. She puts that up there and they talk about it as a class. Normalize mistakes. We're all going to make them. They have to know that's part of learning.
Also, for when it helps to emphasize the process, not the product so much. So it's not
yes.
about being right or wrong. It's about discovery.
Yes, absolutely. Emphasize the process over the product. Yeah. Jackie?
Even sometimes when they're doing more meaningful feedback, the idea that nobody's ever done with anything and nothing is ever perfect. So even the best project, there's something that they can improve on.
Mm-hmm.
That process over and over again.
Yeah.
Back up just a second. Did you mean the favorite N-O or K-N-O-W?
N-O.
Okay, that's fine.
You could call it my favorite mistake as well. Yeah. Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. All right. So here's a couple things to think about under this, the side of the rubric that's all about taking ownership. So I was glancing over your need to knows and someone was like, give me a definition. Simply being an agent for your own learning. That involves having a growth mindset and taking ownership. So here's what we look for in terms of students: that they're meeting benchmark, that they seek feedback, that they're tackle and monitors learning, they're actively participating, they're building relationships, and they're reflecting on their impact and role in the community. So how their actions impact their team members in their group, or for the good of the larger community. So it's easy. I think the easy thing for us to all do would be to focus in on meeting benchmarks. That's the easy thing, right? As you've seen, there is so much more to agency here. So I want to push you to challenge yourself, take a risk, and think about other areas of this, not to say you have to tackle all of them, but what will be a good stretch goal for you on something that you could really focus on with your students in the fall. And it will help them to be successful in this new wide open PBL environment, where we're asking them to take a lot of risks. So, for the teacher, encourage students to pursue their own learning through a variety of activities. So think about content sessions that you've been in this week. Hopefully they've modeled things like optional workshops, having resources in the project briefcase that they could go to and go through at their own pace. Using peers in order to learn from each other. So hopefully you've seen a lot of different options for learning modeled throughout the week. So I want you to think about the same. So remember, the dilemma was, how do we let them take ownership over their learning? This requires us as teachers, take a deep breath, let go a little bit. We let go of control a little bit. Not completely. Don't worry, not completely. But we have to give them opportunities to struggle and make mistakes. Provide frequent feedback on their work from multiple audiences. Feedback doesn't always have to come from you. And I think what I heard you talk about was this opportunity for critique and revision, and building that in as a routine in your classroom. Using warm and cool feedback. Using the critical friends language, if I like, I wonder, in next steps, so it doesn't feel threatening to them. That's just a norm in your community. Everybody does it. I do it as a teacher. You're going to do it as a student. We're going to support each other in this learning. Push students to revise their work. That's come up. Self-assessments. Giving them opportunities to self-assess on the project rubric. Where are you at? Where do you need to grow next? How are you going to get there? Provide scaffolding to monitor and reflect their progress. So there's lots of great tools available in our resource library. There's like a progress tracking sheet, there's a team tracking sheet. So letting them say, okay, here's my task. What do I need to do to get there? We're going to have to do X, Y, and Z. Here's some resources we have, and here's a benchmark we're going to set for ourselves. Giving them the opportunity to practice that organization and time management in a supported way. Create opportunities for students to analyze their own performance. Make them look at their work and see what they did well or didn't do well. And I think that's something we heard earlier. Allow students to make choices about their use of time. This was one of the hardest things for me, was you see that student just wasting time, sitting there, off task. What's your instinct as a teacher? Get back on task. Look at all this stuff you have to do. Why are you off task? What should you do?
Maybe go over and start with some questions.
What's a possible question?
Like I would say, I might ask, so where are you in terms of your project? Can you walk me through the steps you've taken so far, where you are? So I even think about my own process. And in my process with my team, and one of the team members says, okay, my head is just down, I need to go sit outside. And it's like, well, we have 5 minutes. Like, do I want to be that person? No. I want to let them have their time and figure so that we can get to the right place when they're in
Yeah. I heard two things in there that I think are important to unpack. So one is this unrealistic expectation that students be on task 100% of the time throughout the day. We as adults, I guarantee someone in here is like, check their Facebook page once in this session, unless I'm really that compelling, or done something else. But everybody needs some decompression time. So that's one thing that I heard in there that I think is really critical for us to remember as educators. The other thing is the great strategy of, hey, team, how are you doing on your project? What are you working on? Let's get that project task sheet out. What did you say you were going to work on today? What did you set as your goal? Where are you at? How can we get there? What do you need to do? Put it back on them. Help the team hold each other accountable. So that's something I heard you experience this week. All right. And again, I just really want to emphasize that this has to be more than just the ownership over learning piece, which is some of the more observable things that are easier to measure, I think. I think it's easier to measure. They've turned things in, they're going to a workshop, they're using their resources. This is harder, isn't it?
Do we have, because I've seen some other things outside of New Tech that talk about ways to build that. Are there pieces, strategies within New Tech about building the growth mindset?
Yeah, so one of the things, this is also digitally in the briefcase, so if there's not enough copies, don't worry. But one of the things we've been thinking about is just a lot of reflective type activities. So take one of these and pass it around, but these are just some examples from some of the teachers in our network that we asked to kind of think about how would you help students with the scaffolding, hint around your graphic organizer, scaffolding of this growth mindset piece or taking ownership over your learning. So these are from actual teachers in our network. There's two sides to it. The first side focuses on growth mindset and is basically just a reflective tool that they used with their students. And they pulled things from the agency rubric under growth mindset and had students do regular reflection on that. So I think that's the primary strategy that kind of jumps to my mind. Self-assessments. Actually, we'll just keep going here. Should I go ahead a little bit? Keep going. One more. So for growth mindset, so I anticipated you saying, but really kind of like give me some practical about how I'm really going to assess this. So here's some things. So self-assessments and reflections, written assignments, exit tickets, journals, one-on-one conferencing, just sitting down with that kid and having them talk to you about where they're at will give you lots of good data about their growth mindset. Tracking of and reflection of growth over time. So think about ways that you can help students to track their own progress and reflect on that. So those are concrete things that I could think about putting into kind of the grade book. Under ownership over learning, evidence of using feedback to improve work. So if I give this kid a feedback, I would expect to see some evidence of that in their next revision. And that's what I'll grade in the agency category of my grade book. Or the feedback that they got from peers. If they turn in the same draft over and over, I would question their this piece there. Meeting individual and team benchmarks, evidence of using resources to address a need. Are they attending workshops? Maybe having them even keep a log of how they're answering their own need-to-knows. Other ideas you can think of or questions? Leave it there for now. So I want to go back to the teacher's email that I shared earlier, and I'm going to read you her second part after she kind of thought about agency in her classroom. Our perspective on grading has evolved. Students deserve purposeful feedback and an opportunity for revision on project benchmarks. We feel that grades will be living so that revision results in an accurate update on current level of mastery. Grades should accompany a written explanation and suggestions for growth. Here's an interesting one. Activities such as journals, scaffolding, participation, and brainstorms should be ungraded. The rewards and consequences associated with completion of those activities are no longer points, but are either the intrinsic value associated with the personal interest or the social value associated with others counting on them. This requires that relationship building and maintenance and deliberate attention of that throughout the year. So she has completely changed her own mindset about how she's going about assessment.
So, may I?
Yeah.
So what's going on is she stopped grading certain things?
She was grading every single assignment, and what that resulted in was students only doing things to get the grade, or not doing them because they didn't care about grades.
And that in itself changed, sort of made the students do it for other reasons?
I don't think that alone. I think a bigger shift in how she talked about the value of assignments and tasks and her overall shift in assessment. So one of the ideas that came up actually earlier, I don't see him in here, but a teacher was talking about how revision has always been a really important part of his class. He's an English teacher, but he really struggles to get kids to revise, to take that time to revise. And so we talked about, well, what if for every revision you only give them a grade on agency and you give them really specific feedback on their drafts or some opportunity for feedback, whether it's through peers, you, self-feedback, whatever. And you say, I will give you a knowledge and thinking grade on your third draft. Yes?
Okay. How do you assess agency? Because I like that idea, and I kind of do that already with writing.
Great.
But I don't have an agency rubric or anything. So But how do you, so I have students that aren't there a lot for whatever reason. Sometimes they're absent, whatever. How do I assess that student who might not have shown up for my peer review, right? But they bought this final product back that may or may not be what I expected, but in terms of agency, I couldn't see what their process was. I didn't see how they interacted with their peers. Do I just give them a 0 on their agency grade, or?
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, I think if you see no evidence of agency, you can't grade it, right? So the question I would put back to you is, what sort of scaffolds, tangible things might you do to assess their agency? So having them do a reflection of their writing process could be an assessment of agency. If they don't turn that in, again, you won't be able to assess that. Anybody else want to respond to her kind of dilemma that she's posing?
If I'm understanding what she's saying correctly, say you had a day for feedback and the student missed the day, correct?
Well, really, I'm thinking that a student who was often absent, but always would return back a project. She would do work, but she was never really present for the actual in-class work. So, clearly you might do a participation grade. But I don't want to think in terms of participation grade. I want to think more about in terms of their effort and their.
Well, I mean, the beauty of ECHO is that you can access it or access it from wherever. And if this student, and they may not, and I may speak out of turn, but if they have access to the internet at home, then even if they're home doing whatever, and they have time to sit and upload stuff and look at stuff, and through Google Docs and stuff, you guys can still have dialogue back and forth. It could just be written instead of face-to-face and verbal. So you still have that avenue. And it would show agency because the kid was taking the initiative rather than sitting at home and going, well, I sure couldn't do this at the house. They found a way and made it work, and that shows agency.
So this is something I just kind of was thinking about last night. It's not something I've actually used, but something that you could potentially think about a version of this. If students are kind of keeping track of their need-to-knows or what they're struggling with or what they're working on, then have them identify what are your strategies you're going to use to address that need-to-know or to tackle that particular task. And then have them reflect, okay, here's what I did, here's how it worked, here's what I would do differently, that sort of thing. So if that was an expectation that they kind of keep this journal of sorts over the course of an assignment or a project, that is another way that you could sort of assess their agency. It was my progress and reflection. So sort of my ups and downs along the way, how you responded. So remember that sort of that domain of tackling and monitoring their own learning. That's what this really gets at. So the big thing that I want to also kind of underscore in all of this is that agency is really, it supports and enhances all the other learning outcomes. You're going to see a lot of overlap with collaboration, and obviously, you know, if they develop agency, that their knowledge, their ability to kind of excel in the knowledge and thinking is going to grow. So, and I heard some people kind of talk about, well, like, this is the glue that holds it all together, and I think that's a great way to kind of describe that. Like, without this, it's hard for students to be successful in any area. So this needs attention by us. You can go on one more. So here's some other just like general assessment practices that support the development of agency. Don't grade content when the skill is new. If students haven't had the chance to practice and put forth effort in order to get better at something, they're going to feel deflated when they get, you know, you just taught me this today and you're assessing me and I don't get it. You gave me a D. Stress level, kind of back to dilemma 1. I'm not successful, therefore I can't be successful. Okay, so just something to think about. We've talked about this a lot already. Give detailed and specific feedback on how they can improve. Provide multiple opportunities for mastery. So that revision aspect. What if a student doesn't get it on your assessment of knowledge and thinking, but a week later they do? Can they replace that grade? Ensure students understand how they're being assessed and how to demonstrate mastery. This is why a rubric is so important. Don't hold that back from kids. They have to know what it takes to be successful. So you need to give them that rubric early on in the project process, and you need to help them understand the criteria in the rubric and what exemplary work really looks like. Look at some models together. Unpack those descriptors in the rubric with them. Provide a variety of assessment types, kind of talked about that. Focus on a few domains at a time in order to go deep. I would never give this entire rubric, I mean, this is it's a 2-pager, right? This is a big rubric that's got a lot in it. So it would be really daunting, I think, for a student to get this big rubric and be like, oh my gosh, I've got to demonstrate all these things. So focus on a few key items at a time. So for a project, you might say, what's really going to be important in this project is that you seek challenge. I really want to see you stretch yourself in this project, and we're going to celebrate when we see each other taking challenges and taking risks. That's our focus for this project. So that's a bit about kind of that culture piece that you can create. All right? And then just a few last tips, because we are out of time. So these are some resources that are in the Collaboration Clinic briefcase, but there's a whole end-to-end quick guide on agency with other resources, lots of articles around growth mindset, some videos if you're more of a video person. So I really encourage you to spend some time in there. The agency rubrics, obviously, the self-assessment tools that I passed out and which are also posted in there, and there's some great project management tools to help kids with that part about taking ownership over their own learning. Some other tips. How many of you are a little worried about how parents are going to respond to this? Yeah, this is a new word, right? And even ourselves, when we were kind of like, I don't know, do we use agency? Do we not? I mean, they're laughing back there, the other coaches, because we had so many discussions about what to call this. And really, agency like grew on us over time, and we really grew to love it and kind of liked that it's a sort of an unknown word at this point. because I think that's going to create some need to knows and some opportunities for you to have this discussion with parents and students. So include parents in this discussion. Include them in understanding growth mindset, how to give praise and feedback, the importance of letting students learn from their mistakes. Invite them to the table in this discussion. I can imagine the whole set of parent nights all around just growth mindset. And really, I'm a parent, and this work has helped me as a parent to be a better parent. Think about a school-wide approach. So the language that you use will be important in cultivating agency. The type of feedback that you give, how you give praise, all of those sorts of things. I have one school that they said they're going to always say, "We haven't mastered that yet." Something as simple as that. Include students in thinking about how they can demonstrate agency. Ask them what being an agent for your own growth and learning might look like. That would be an awesome first kind of classroom experience to invite them to the table on this. So we're out of time. Hopefully I answered your need to knows. We were kind of glancing through them over here. I may not have gotten to all of them, but thank you. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm always happy to chat about agency. Thanks.